Malcolm McLaren was more than just a kind of music manager. He was, he created chaos. It wasn't about just selling records for him or having success. It was actually about trying to cause as much mayhem, as much carnage as possible. He wanted to get into the mainstream and basically change culture from the inside. He was a dreaming, scheming kind of pop Svengali. His grandma once said to him, "To be bad is good, and to be good is simply boring." And I think that's kind of a motto for his entire career, really, because when he was at his best, it was when he was being really quite frightfully bad.
I am an anti-coaster. I am an anarcho-coaster. Don't know what I want, but I know how to get it.
I think Malcolm McLaren is always going to be remembered first and foremost as manager of the Sex Pistols. Some of the things he did with that band have gone down as iconic moments of rock history. The boat party on the Thames where they all ended up arrested, signing the contract outside Buckingham Palace, and obviously also the darker side of that, with Sid Vicious dying and some of the things he created, all the carnage he created, how it actually backfired, and he was often, a bit out of his depth as well. But he also did, so much more. He was on the ball when it came to world music and African rhythms and the influence of that in the 80s. He was there at the start of hip hop, and he was, working with hip hop artists before anyone even knew what it was really in Britain. It was just really interesting to hear what he had to say about the future, because it always sounded bonkers and like it was never going to happen. And then, 5 years later, he'd quite often be proved right.
There are all these girls kung-fuing to West End girls by the Pet Shop Boys, trying to rap Grandmaster Flash's The Message and throwing in all their Mandarin melodies, and it was like a mad coast.
So I actually interviewed Malcolm McLaren once, and I think it was scheduled for 15 minutes on the phone. About an hour into this interview, I thought it was probably, maybe time I should ask my second question, because that's what he was like. He would just talk and talk and talk, and you would not be able to get a word in. But it was all completely fascinating stuff. He was telling me about his love of kind of Paris and situationism. He was telling me about chip music, which he thought was going to be the big new thing in kind of through the 2010s. He talked about like the emerging Chinese economy. So some people are definitely inspired by him. You look at someone like Alan McGee, he will talk about how he used to manage the Mary chain, and his whole method of managing them was just to try and ape Malcolm McLaren. No one would do that now. People would be trying to get their bands out of the way. And that's probably good for these artists in terms of shifting a few more units, but it's not, he saw the big picture. He saw, the lasting influence of what these, bands would mean to people. And he thought it was much more important than the short-term game.